place. I walked in as a sous.
How did you manage that?
I think it was very fortuitous for both of us because he was a new chef in the U.S. He'd been in maybe for a year. He respected my European training. I think he really he wanted someone.
He wanted someone who had been in a hard French kitchen.
He got that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very fortuitous for both of us. He gave me total latitude on parts of the menu, which was very helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a busy restaurant.
He let you be the boss you wanted to be.
The boss, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think I did as well as I should have. I was very hot-headed.
Yeah.
I mean, like really hot-headed at the time. And that carried for several years. But he gave me like the lunch menu, and he helped work with me on guiding sort of from a vision perspective. But he gave me wide latitude to hire, to train, all of it, and that was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
The problem was he then went to New York. I didn't want to go to New York because I frankly I didn't want to repeat. I don't want to say this, like the degree of poverty and absence that I had working for Patterson. I didn't want to go to New York and do that.
Yeah.
I always said to myself, I'll go to New York when I'm going to open something in New York.
Exactly.
Go to New York visit.
Yeah.
So I elected not to go with him. I wasn't going to stay at Camden Place. So I took my first chef position at Chez TJ.
Chez TJ, gotcha. Who'd you take it over from?
The chef prior to me was Josh Skeens, but he had been gone for a while.
Heard that.
So there might have been someone in the
intermediate.
Yeah, for several months or something. But he had been the chef.
How long had Josh Skeens been the chef?
Like
there?
a minute.
Okay, gotcha. And then you showed up there, and now walking in the door to this restaurant where you are now the chef of. What was your mentality? Did you have the drive? Were you like, I'm gonna get my stars?
Well, the stars weren't even they didn't even exist. Michelin was just getting there that first year.
Okay.
I mean, I was pretty focused. Let's put it lightly.
Yeah.
I was highly, highly focused and highly motivated to be successful. At a certain point, you put the time in. You know how it is. You put the time in. You put the years in. No, my thing was no one was going to stop.
Yeah, no one's going to stop this. Yeah.
I walk in the kitchen that first day, and it's like I won't even say a pirate ship because it was a pirate ship. It was like it was a joke. The guy. I see a guy with a massive big beanie on, making himself eggs on an induction burner, and this guy. I mean, it was garbage.
Yeah.
It was garbage. So I was very aggressive and very quick, flipped it around. I was lucky to come in with a guy named Chris Detmer, who was one of my cooks who I'd hired at Campton as an extern, and he worked with me at Campton, and I love the guy to death. And he convinced his wife somehow to move down to Mountain View, which is where Chez TJ was, and together we turned that thing around.
Yeah.
And that was the first year that Michelin came out, and it was a cute little restaurant. A little dumpy. The kitchen was super, super dumpy. The dining room was dumpy, but it had charm. And I think we did really good food. The food for me at that point was definitely a little more French. It was like stuffed quail, but the quail was wrapped in bacon, and it was stuffed with truffles and oysters. It was a little more luxury, a little heavier. We got a star that first year, which was like crazy time.
You got your first Michelin star.
Crazy. First year as a chef. I wasn't that young.
But you were the youngest, no, for a time.
I was the third young. Well, I was probably. I don't know. I don't know if this is still true, but I remember they say when we got 3 stars, it was like the third youngest ever.
Yeah.
In the guide, I don't know if that's. I have no idea. But we got a star that year. It was a big deal. All of a sudden, this little restaurant that was doing like 6 covers a night.
You're like crushed.
Dude, it's packed. The owner gets himself a new car. I'm seeing all this stuff happen. I'm making no money still.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, this is time for me to make money now.
Well, yeah. That's fast forward year 2, we're humming, we're busy. We get 2 Michelin stars. So this is like my first year being a chef, we got 1. The second year being a chef, we got 2. All of a sudden, this is when there's like the laundry had 3 stars, and there's like 3 2-stars. There was like Manresa, now Chez TJ. It wasn't as numerous as it is now, and it was a big deal.
Yeah,
that's when I'm like, hey George, I need some more money.
Yeah,
and because my bonus, as it were, for getting 2 stars was like he gave me like the company card, told me to go have a good night out. And George is a great guy.
Yeah.
And a great guy. But he's like your uncle. He'll come and like pretend like he's pulling something from behind your ear. It's like a $20 bill, and you're like, "Thanks, George." Like,
yeah, I hear you. That's so awesome.
So at that point, the restaurant in Meadowood had gotten 2 stars, and I had never heard of the restaurant.
Yeah, who was the chef of the restaurant?
A guy named Joe Humphreys, who's kind of a San Francisco journeyman, veteran, really nice.
So that's the first time you heard of Meadowood.
I never heard of it. Yeah.
Did you have any? Did you like Napa? Had you gone up there?
I've been to Napa maybe once. Me and Daniel Hammond come up to cook something at Vineyard 29, which is just where we sit now, just half a mile down.
Did you know any other chefs up here?
I knew Chiarello.
Okay.
I didn't know him personally, but I loved Seasons in the Wine Country, the cookbook.
Yeah,
one of those early cookbooks. That I thought it was a great cookbook. I think that's really it. It's the only sense I had of it. I remember driving through St. Helena the first time, probably to go to Vineyard 29 for that event with Daniel.
Yeah.
And thinking it was cute. I mean, but I didn't care about where I lived.
Yeah.
It wasn't about. I would have, if the work was right and if I could do something there. I didn't care. I never thought about life like that.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. So Joe leaves the restaurant Meadowood. This is right before the economic crash of 2008.
Yeah.
Joe leaves the restaurant Meadowood to go take over this new hotel, Cavallo Point in Sausalito. So the owner's wife of Chez TJ jokingly says, "Hey, it looks like Meadowood's looking for a 2-star chef." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to be right back." And I called Joe, who I knew, who put me in touch with Stan Bromley and the Meadowood people. And I was up there the next week interviewing and eating and staying and stuff.
And at that point, your mind's just like...
Well, I saw it with Meadowood. Stylistically, it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but it was a hell of a lot closer than Chez TJ was.
Hell yeah!
And it had all these other things associated with it. You had a really good functioning front of the house and a dining room that was nice and what I saw was if I could come in with the food piece, we could do something great there. I don't know if in my mind I was thinking 3 stars. I don't recall, but I remember coming up. I actually came up to eat with a buddy of mine, Blair. And I remember because we stopped at Ubuntu for lunch when Jeremy was at Ubuntu, when Jeremy Cox was at Ubuntu. And just had like this. I mean, I know Jeremy from he used to be the CDC of Monterey, so we've known each other. We knew each other for a while. I remember just having an extraordinary lunch there, having a dinner at Meadowood, and being like, I remember sitting in that room in the dining room at Meadowood. This is when it was still like white and paisleys and ruffles, and again, not stylistically not awesome, but I remember being like, this is like a really nice restaurant.
Yeah.
Like I could do something with this.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving Chez TJ and.
How was that breaking away from that?
I'd like to think I love George to death, and I mean I've told you I tell this to people all the time. Like I think every chef deserves a Chez TJ experience. Like, an owner like that who's super supportive, who gives you that autonomy, and to do so in a place like Mountain View where you're outside of the city, so the pressure isn't crazy. Mm-hmm. Everything used to be much more city focused. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're outside the city, it was kind of like a ghost town. But outside the city enough where you have the time to get your shit together and hopefully become great, but close enough to the city that if you do so, you can make something of yourself.
Yeah.
It was a perfect dynamic. It was 5 nights a week. I lived in a double wide trailer behind the restaurant. We had no money. I would do sous vide on my stovetop in my house and wake up every hour to go check things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was crazy. It was like 1,000% all consuming.
Wow.
But that's what it was, and that's what it took to get there. Yeah. So upon leaving, he was okay. He wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that we did good things for that restaurant.
Got you. And had you met Martina at this time?
No.
Already?
No, I didn't meet Martina for a few years.
Okay, got you. Yeah. So you get up to Meadowood and you start being the chef there. Tell me about the first few days.
Well, the first day of service was Valentine's Day.
Oh, God.
2008. And the menu, I wasn't going to change the menu. It was literally my first day. I wasn't going to change the menu. I was just going to watch how they executed.
Yeah.
It was a set menu. And frankly, if I may be honest, I was really appalled by how things were.
Yeah.
So, of course, decided just to change everything.
Right in the middle. Service.
Yeah, well, they were like cooking they were doing quail. And they were cooking all the quail ahead of service. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Cook this to order. What do you, like, it just wasn't how I tended to do things.
Yeah.
So, of course, it blew up service. It was horrible. It was just a disaster. And I flipped the whole staff several times. We've talked about this several times before, over the course of a couple of years before you get the right kind of team.
Who was that first shiny, bright-eyed kid that you were like, that stayed with you for a long time?
I would say, Chris Detmer came with me to Meadowood, the guy who was my sous at Chez TJ. So he came with me. I remember sitting at Martini House, which is now Goose and Gander, around the corner.
Okay.
Writing out our first menu.
Yeah.
In like a cold winter January. I remember sitting there. So he was instrumental. Vicky Gussman, who came with me from Chez TJ as well.
Yeah.
And Travis Hunter, who came with me from Chez TJ. Travis went on to work here as a sous chef.
Yeah.
Worked at Atelier Cren. Worked at a bunch of places.
Okay.
So those were like the three core.
That came with you.
Yeah.
Now, you had another sous chef at Chez TJ who's now a very popular chef in San Francisco. Am I correct? What's her name? She has Francis.
Michaela.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if she's still cooking. She was my sous chef after Chris Detmer left.
Yeah.
Detmer's wife finally got him to move back to like Upper Michigan.
She's like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, she was. They had a kid. They were done with it. This is I'm sorry. After they got them to move from Napa to Michigan.
Yeah.
Michaela Rayhorst was and remains the hardest working, most diligent person.
Yeah, you were telling me about her, and she's like...
She would have she had a second job. She lived in Oakland.
Yeah.
She would commute to Chez TJ and did additional work for like UCSF hospitals or something. Doing, I don't know, data entry or something.
Yeah.
She was a phenomenal cook, phenomenal leader, and it's an all-around amazing person.
Yeah, and her restaurants are amazing.
Yeah, so she was the CDC at Francis.
Yeah.
And then she was at Del Popolo, and I don't know if she's cooking anymore.
Heard that.
She's great. Yeah.
And then, so you're up here at the restaurant in Meadowood. Let's call it Tram.
Okay, so we're at Tram.
What were the first like stations for you? Like as you're building this new kitchen, kind of piecing it together.
It was interesting. You're sort of walking in, as oftentimes happens. You're walking into an existing system. So at the beginning, you just sort of let that
feel it out.
Yeah, you feel it out and let that happen. But I mean, if you can, the kitchen was not great. But it was serviceable. The problem was, and no one who worked at Tram after 2011 or 12 knows any of this.
Yeah.
But the kitchen was, you shared this three-star level kitchen with like, on the other side of the stoves was like the banquet kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was just cacophony of, it was a shit
So you're doing like 300-person weddings at the same time you're trying to do.
We are, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, it was really hard.
Yeah.
And I mean really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and this led to a lot of problems over the years. And this you learn this after a certain while. Is like no one really understands what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You think they do
until you show them.
Exactly, until you do it.
Yeah.
You think you're using the right words, and you think you've proven something, but no one really understands where you're going, other than you.
Yeah.
Even the people who are by your side, most of them don't really get it.
Yeah.
And that was very much the case with Meadowood, where it was not built for what we did. So it was 8 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. And we bristled and we outgrew it, and that's why at a certain point we got 3 stars in that kitchen, which is just a miracle.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, our third or fourth year. So that was 2012. I think we got our 3rd star. At which point we shut down and redid the place. Got
you. So you're like, okay, I showed you now.
Yeah. Now,
please give me a new kitchen.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay,
got
you. And what was that? How much was that build out?
I don't remember the total build out. I remember the kitchen itself was very expensive.
Yeah.
And this is $2,012, but it was a really expensive kitchen. But I mean, as you know, it was a really well done kitchen.
Yeah.
It was. I worked so diligently on that kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think the design came out well, and it was very functional.
Yeah, for sure.
It aged well. We took beautiful care of it. The team really I love that place. And that when you see the ruins of that thing, not to fast forward too much, but you see when you see the ruins of that thing, it's just hard to fathom.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So you get your 3 stars, and then sort of in a chef's career, I think that a lot of us think that 3 stars is it, and I know you are. Driven. Yeah. So after the 3 stars, where does one go from there?
Well, I mean, if I was 50 when I got 3 stars,
I'd be like, I'm done.
My approach would have maybe been different, maybe. But I was
32.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was 32 or something like that.
Gotcha.
So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Other than keep pushing. And I mean, I should tell this. I mean, tell the story of like. When we got 3 stars, they still do these Michelin parties.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. How was that?
Dude, I went to San Francisco.
You got Thomas Keller giving you the old nookie?
First, I mean, if I can tell this story.
Yeah.
When we got the call, so I was, at this point, I'm living with my then girlfriend, now wife, Martina. Mm-hmm. We're living in St. Helena. We lived over on Hunt Street.
Yeah.
And I know this call is coming. And I feel like we got 3 stars that year.
Yeah.
We were humming. And we're walking with Charlie, my dog,
yeah.
who's then a puppy, through the vineyard into town.